Hello everybody, it's Sports Guy Ron. I'm here with your playoff picture update after week 15, before week 16 of the season. 3 games left for everybody. Let's look at the AFC first. We have Denver. They're the number 1 seed right now. They're 12-2. They have clinched the playoff spot. So as you see, they're 100% right now with a win and a loss. That's the 3 columns there on the left. On the right are the 3 games that they have left. They have Jacksonville at Kansas City and the Chargers week 18. The second seed is New England, 11-3. Even losing to Buffalo last week, they still have a 1-game lead over Buffalo. They are better than 99% to make the playoffs. So if they win this week, they will be 100%. They will have clinched a playoff spot. Even with a loss, they're still greater than 99% to make the playoffs. It would take a combination of things like that. It's hard to believe would happen for them not to make the playoffs at this point. Their last 3 games: at Baltimore, at the Jets, home for Miami. So not too difficult of a schedule. 3 teams that right now are not in the playoffs. So New England's obviously in the playoffs. They still have a chance at the number 1 seed, considering the schedule that Denver still has. So we'll keep an eye on that this coming week. The 3rd seed is Jacksonville, leading the AFC South. Right now, they're 98% to make the playoffs. They're 10-4. If they win, they're greater than 99% to make the playoffs. At 11, they'd be 11-4 at that point. They have 3 games left. They're at Denver, at Indianapolis, home for Tennessee. So for them not to make the playoffs, they'd have to lose all 3 and have a lot of other things happen, which is very unlikely, especially with that Tennessee game, the 3rd game. Pittsburgh is the 4th seed. They're 8-6. They're leading the AFC North. Right now, they are 62% to make the playoffs. If they win this week, they are at Detroit. They would be 76%. If they lose, they're 54%. So, big difference this week. Tough game at Detroit. Detroit needs this game very badly. Then they have at Cleveland, which is a divisional game, and we've seen some divisional teams be able to win, like New Orleans over Carolina, Atlanta over Tampa last week. Cleveland did beat Pittsburgh at Cleveland last year, so there is a chance of that happening. Pittsburgh will definitely still be favored, but then they have the home game against Baltimore week 18th that may decide the division and the playoff spot. The first wild card right now is the LA Chargers. They're 10-4. Right now, they're 94%. If they win, they're going to be greater than 99% to make the playoffs. With a loss, they're still 91%. They have 3 games left: at Dallas, home for Houston, at Denver. So not an easy schedule, especially those Houston and Denver games. At Dallas is not a picnic, but is definitely winnable. And and I think they're favored. They might be favored. I don't know. I haven't looked at the lines yet. The 6th seed is Buffalo. They're 10-4. Even though they're the 6th seed behind the Chargers, they actually have better chances to make the playoffs. They are more than 99% right now. And if they win, if they lose, the same thing. Even if they lose, they're still 99%. So they're at Cleveland this week. So it's a likely win. They have home for Philadelphia. That's going to be a tough game. And then home for the Jets week 18. So it looks pretty secure that Buffalo's in the playoffs. The 7th seed is Houston, 9-5. Right now they're 96% to make the playoffs. With a win, they're 97%. Even with a loss, they're still 86% to make the playoffs. They play Las Vegas this week. That's a pretty easy game for them. Then they have at the Chargers and home for Indianapolis the last two weeks. Tough games, so we'll see what happens there. But they really need to win this game against Las Vegas and see what happens. Right now, on the outside looking in, first team is Indianapolis. They're 8-6. with the losses that they've had lately and the quarterback situation. Right now, they're only 13% to make the playoffs. If they win this week, they play San Francisco on Monday night. They'd be up to 25%, depending on what other things happened. Their percent chance drops to 6% with a loss. So they really need to win this game. They have three really tough games. They have home for San Francisco, home for Jacksonville, at Houston. 3 playoff teams right now, and that's going to be really tough for them. It's really hard to see them making the playoffs. They definitely have to run the table and hope for some help. The 9th seed right now is Baltimore. They're 7-7. Their way to make the playoffs is to win the AFC North realistically. Right now, they're 39% to make the playoffs. If they win this week, it's 47%. If they lose, it's 27%. So pretty large difference, 20% if they win or lose. They do play New England at home. That's a tough game. Then they have at Green Bay week 17, also a very tough game. And then at Pittsburgh to end the season. They really need to at least split these 2 games before going to Pittsburgh to hopefully have a chance to win the division by beating Pittsburgh. Not sure if that's even enough, but they need a win. And they prefer a win against New England, a conference win that would help them a little more. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it's pretty set. You've got Denver, New England, Jacksonville, Chargers, Buffalo, Houston, and then whoever wins the AFC North, which right now is Pittsburgh, and they're leading by 1 game. So let's move over to the NFC. As far as the NFC goes, the Rams are the number 1 seed. They're 11-3. They have clinched a playoff spot. That's why you have the 100% there. They have a schedule coming up. It's at Seattle. That's Thursday night. That's tomorrow. Then they are at Atlanta and home for Arizona. So 2 a little easier games after this one. They're in the playoffs. I think they're going to have a really good chance to finish as the 1 seed if they can get this win at Seattle. Then they have Atlanta, Arizona. I think it's more than likely they will end up the number 1 seed. But we've seen stranger things before. The 2 seed is Chicago right now, 10-4. They are only 76% to make the playoffs despite being the 2 seed and 10-4. Remember last week they were the 7 seed, so they flipped with Green Bay based on the results from last week. They beat Cleveland, and then Green Bay lost that game last week where Micah Parsons got hurt against Denver. So they flip-flop. So Chicago's the 2 seed leading the division. They're 95% if they get the win this week. They are playing Green Bay. It is at home in Chicago. So if they win that game, they're 95% to make the playoffs then. If they lose that game, they've dropped to 60%. So it makes a big difference for them. This game is a huge game, obviously, for the division. Week 17, they have at San Francisco, another tough game. Week 18, home for Detroit. That could be for a playoff spot as well, because Detroit's tight on the butts of everybody else. So in a bad world, they lose all 3 games and can miss the playoffs. But in a good world, they win all 3 games, and maybe they're the 1 or the 2 seed. The 3rd seed right now is Philadelphia, 9-5. It's likely to stay that way. If they win this week, they clinch the division. Right now, they're 99% to make the playoffs. Dallas is 1%. That's the only percent that's keeping them out. Even if they lose, they're still 97%. They're at Washington. Then they have at Buffalo, which is a very tough game, week 17, but home for Washington, week 18. You got to figure they're going to get one of those wins and win the division. And, they could move up in seeding, and I guess they could theoretically move down. More than likely, I think they're going to be the 3 seed. The 4th seed is Tampa Bay. They're leading the NFC South by tiebreakers right now over Carolina. They're 79% to make the playoffs right now. With a win this week at Carolina, they would go up to 95%. With a loss, they'd be 57%. Like I said, they play this week at Carolina, big divisional matchup. Then they have at Miami, which is a frisky game. Miami's not terrible, but they're not very good. They're kind of in between. Sounds like they're going to have a new quarterback. Tua, they're going to sit. So we'll see about that. Then week 18, they have a home game against Carolina. So Carolina and Tampa play 2 of the next 3 weeks. It could very well decide the division, and we'll see what happens there. The number 5 seed is Seattle. They're 11-3, just like the Rams. Those 2 teams play tomorrow. Seattle is hosting that game. If they win, they move up to the number 1 seed. If they lose, they could actually drop. Right now, they're greater than 99% to make the playoffs. If they win that game, they are 100% in the playoffs. Even if they lose, they're still 99%. They have the Rams, then they have at Carolina, at San Francisco, a very difficult schedule these next 3 games for Seattle. I can see a world where they lose 3 and they're 11-6. I mean, there is a possibility of that happening. That's why I think they're greater than 99%. They would have to have a whole bunch of things happen for them not to make the playoffs. But we'll see what happens there. I don't think they're going to lose all 3, so I think they're going to make the playoffs. But you got something to watch, because those are 3 very tough games, and all 3 of those teams right now are either in playoff positions or looking to make the playoffs, like Carolina. The 6th seed is San Francisco, 10-4. They're 98% to make the playoffs. If they win this week at Indy, they're greater than 99%. If they lose, they're still 84%. So they got at Indy on Monday night this week. Then they have home against Chicago, home for Seattle. 3 very tough games, but 2 of them are at home. So we'll see what happens there. They can move way up or down in the pecking order in the playoffs. There is a chance they could miss it, but it's not likely. So we'll see what happens. But San Francisco's playing some pretty good ball, and it's pretty dependent on the games coming up. The 7 seeds Green Bay, they're 9-4-1 right now. They're 89% to make the playoffs. If they win against Chicago in Chicago this week, they're 99%. If they lose, they're 77%. With the tie, they're very unlikely to have a tiebreaker be a deciding factor. So we'll see about that, how that plays out. Their games are at Chicago, home for Baltimore, at Minnesota. So not the toughest schedule in the world. On the outside looking in right now is Detroit, 8-6. They're 38% to make the playoffs. With a win against Pittsburgh at home, they're 48%. If they lose, they're 15%. So they definitely need to win this game against Pittsburgh. Then they have at Minnesota and at Chicago, 2 road games to close out the season, and 2 road divisional games. Not going to be easy, especially that Chicago game. But they have a chance still. They need to win all 3 and see what happens. But if they do, they have a very good chance of making it. Carolina's next, number 9. They're 7-7. They really need, more than likely at this point, they really need to win the division. They have 2 games with Tampa. They can do that. In between those games is that home game against Seattle, which is not going to be an easy game. So that's where they're at. They need to play better than they did against New Orleans this week, or they're not going to win that division. Although Tampa didn't play any better against Atlanta. So we'll see what happens with those games. I put Dallas on the board because they do have a 1% chance. They need to win 3 games. They could get 10-7-1. And that, they might be able to make it. If Philadelphia would lose their next 3, they would win the division. That's their chance, I guess. If they win this week against the Chargers, they're up to 2%. It really doesn't help them a whole lot. If they lose, it's less than 1%. If they lose, they're out. So that's the way I look at it. So they have the Chargers at Washington and at the Giants, 2 road divisional games, but not the toughest teams. if they were able to win out, but highly unlikely at this point. So a lot of games with the playoff teams, especially in the NFC, like Seattle has 3 games with the competitors for the playoffs, with the Rams, Carolina, and San Francisco. San Francisco has 3 games, 2 with the NFC competitors, Chicago and Seattle, and 1 with at Indianapolis. So a lot of exciting games these last 3 weeks that are going to decide these playoffs. A lot of the matchups are still in flux, but the teams, a lot of them are solidified, but there's still that little bit of chance, especially in the NFC, that we get a different team. So there's a look at the playoff picture after week 15. Look forward to my video on the week 16 preview coming up tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video at all, I hope you think about giving it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.